The story begins in a faraway land, where a great war was waged for many years between the king of humans and the demons. The humans were led to victory by a very special hero, a man named Li Zhou. He was known by many titles: the man from another world, the dragon slayer, and also the man engaged to the outcast daughter of Duke Badget, Miss Nadia. But their engagement wasn't exactly the romantic fairy tale Nadia had always dreamed of. Before Zhou became the kingdom's favorite warrior, their fates were thrown together by their families, against the young couple's will. You see, Nadia was far from the favorite in her family. As the daughter of Duke Badget, she should have been spoiled, rich, pretty, and powerful. But as an illegitimate child, she was treated like an outcast by both her family and the servants alike. That is, until one day, her father finally found a purpose for her. He decided to use his daughter as a pawn for the sake of their family's future, marrying her off to the strange man from another world who had been summoned to save the kingdom. Before anyone else recognized Zhou for his skills, Duke Badget could already tell he would become a great man, and so he arranged the engagement with his eldest daughter at once. Despite all the uncertainty, Nadia still hoped for a quiet, peaceful married life. Of course, we all know that was never going to happen. She's the protagonist. Peaceful isn't even in her dictionary. Before Nadia even realized she'd been duped, she was locked in a cell and told she would never see her husband again. As if that wasn't bad enough, the one who locked her up was her very own sister, Karen. Once Zhou went to war and became the nation's darling, the Badget family decided that their illegitimate daughter was no longer suitable to be his wife. And you won't believe the lengths they went to in order to end the engagement. Zhou, supposedly the nation's most honorable man, teamed up with Duke Badget and Karen to drug Nadia at a royal ball and hire a man to take advantage of her. How messed up is that? By the time she woke up, she was half naked and surrounded by nobles sneering and laughing at her. Her own father, sister, and fiancé had planned the entire thing, down to the last detail. Despicable. What little reputation Nadia had was now ruined. Her engagement was broken off, and no noble family would dare help a disgraced and illegitimate daughter, especially when her own family had shunned her. Using that disgrace as an excuse, the final act was to stage her death. As Nadia was dragged away by thugs, Karen calmly explained that her sacrifice would protect the family's honor. I seriously can't believe these people. This woman is a true psychopath. Panicking as the rope tightened around her neck, Nadia thought back on her sad little life. She had obeyed every command she was given and always tried to stay out of the limelight. She gave everything up so her sister Karen could shine, that same sister who smiled as she took Nadia's last breath. In the end, their plan succeeded. But things didn't end with Nadia's death. When she opened her eyes, she had gone back in time, 3 years earlier, when she was 20 years old, before any of this mess began. At first, she couldn't believe it. But as the truth began to sink in, Nadia realized she had been given a second chance. Still, that's a pretty tall order. How is she supposed to do things differently this time? Is it even possible to escape her evil half-sister and father, or is everything destined to repeat itself? While Nadia is still trying to figure out her strategy, she's interrupted by a very moody maid who starts yelling at her to get out so the room can be cleaned. And that pretty much makes the decision for her. Whatever happens, Nadia is going to get revenge. This time around, things will be different. As if to confirm her decision, the maid accuses her of staining the mirror with her fingerprints and even shoves her. What kind of servant treats their mistress so rudely? Apparently, the kind who would also serve her the drug 3 years later at that fateful ball. I guess she was in Karen's pocket from the start. In this life, Nadia refuses to be beaten down and bullied. So she just smiles sweetly at the maid and walks off. She runs into the head maid in the corridor, who informs her that the king has come to visit her father. After putting on a proper outfit, Nadia answers her father's summons, only to be immediately scolded for being late. Will they give her a break already? While they head off to meet His Majesty, the Duke preps her for the meeting. There's some kind of ceremony coming up in which Nadia is supposed to give Li Zhou a laurel crown. Nadia remembers this from her past life. The ceremony is a long-standing tradition where a young woman of marriageable age gives a laurel crown to the hero for whom the ceremony is held. It's basically a confession of love. But Duke Badget is also using it as a chance to make Lee Joe the center of attention. Obviously, Joe was the main hero of the war, but there are other warriors being celebrated too. By offering the crown to Joe, Nadia will be following along with her father's plan to help him climb the social ladder and eventually end up as his wife again. And we all know how that ended. So, she's got to get out of this somehow. While her father and the king sit down to discuss the ceremony, Nadia and Karen serve tea and cakes like good little daughters. The king seems very angry about one man in particular, the Northern Mayoress of Winterfell, who is on hostile terms with Southern society, including the royal family. Since he also played a big role in the war, he's supposed to be celebrated during the upcoming event. The king is irritated by the idea of giving the Northerners a chance to get rowdy. To reassure him, Duke Badget suggests a way to keep them in check, by securing a marriage for the Mayoress. Oh, come on. Do these men ever think about anything besides marriage? Is that all women are good for in this world? Even though it's predictable, marrying the Mayoress of Winterfell to the daughter of a southern nobleman would be effective in subduing tensions between the two regions. Suddenly, Nadia gets a brainwave. What if she offered herself for the job? Wait, is she serious? This girl was murdered in her past life because she acted like her father's pawn and married a war hero. Now she's going to do the exact same thing again, just for a different man?
You've got to be kidding me.
Nadia hesitates for a split second, but then ends up offering herself directly to the king. She makes it seem like she's trying to be a dutiful daughter, but really, she has a plan. At least, I sure hope she does. Her father and sister think she's lost her mind, mainly because the Badget and Winterfell families are famously on bad terms. There's no guarantee the Mayoress would even accept a bride from the south, let alone the daughter of his worst enemy. But the king's curiosity is piqued when Nadia suggests offering her laurel to the Mayoress instead of Joe. Her father harshly calls her stupid and insists the Mayoress would never accept. Nadia seems scared, but she stands her ground. As they pointed out earlier, it was the Mayoress who requested the ceremony in the first place. That must mean he wants to receive a laurel crown and maybe even improve his standing in society. If he refuses a young woman's offering, he'll be considered a bad man, and his achievements in the war could easily be overshadowed by the drama of the ceremony. If he's not an idiot, he'll accept the laurel just to avoid that situation. And after that, the king can pressure him into the marriage. There'll be nothing he can do to refuse.
Damn.
Our girl Nadia is one smart cookie. This is why her father should be using her for her brains, not just her marriage prospects. The king seems pretty convinced. And surprisingly, so does the duke. But after his majesty has left, Nadia gets an earful from her sister for being so bold as to go against the original plan. Even though her father ultimately benefits from the change, he still demands an explanation for her disobedience. After everything that happened in her past life, it's hard for Nadia to hold back her tears and defend herself. Her father isn't convinced that this was all just a ploy to choose her own husband, so she explains the political motivations behind her choice. As you might have already guessed, the current royal family is basically a puppet of the Badget Duke, making him effectively the most powerful man in the kingdom. If the northern families rebel, that puts him in a very dangerous position. So, Nadia plays on his fears, convincing him that she did all of this so she could become a spy for the family, feeding them information from the north and removing the threat to her father's position. At this point, I'm starting to wonder how they manipulated her so easily in her last life. Was she always this smart? Obviously, the Duke can't refuse an argument like that. And when she makes up a story about becoming a rich widow after her father defeats the Mayoress, he's finally convinced. She's only been back one day, but already she's achieved her main goal, not getting married to Joe again. Plus, the rude maid, who is basically Karen's right-hand woman, got kicked out for stealing. Do you guys think Nadia set that one up too? Or was it just luck? Time slips by quickly after that, and before she knows it, the day of the ceremony has arrived. The Mayoress has been given center stage to lead the procession, while half the kingdom lines up to celebrate their triumphant warrior. So far, everything is happening exactly the same way it did in her previous life, even down to the seating. Karen, sitting beside her half-sister, is not happy about Nadia having such an important role. She even makes a snide comment about Nadia borrowing her jewelry, when in fact, the necklace Nadia is wearing belonged to her own mother. Swallowing her anger, she says nothing and prepares for the arrival of the Maris. And look who came with him. If it isn't her ex-fiancé, the man who conspired to murder her with her own family. Despite his cruelty, it still hurts for Nadia to see him again. After all, she thought they had a connection, or, at least, she thought he cared about her enough not to kill her. The Maris of Winterfell kneels before the king, who congratulates him on a splendid victory. He reminds His Majesty of the previous Maris, who used to be a talented knight before his health failed, and he had to step down. The king is really rubbing it in, deliberately trying to touch a nerve by mentioning his father and their loyalty to the royal family, who they obviously hate. After he's done making the Maris mad, he gives his opening speech, and the Duke steps forward to offer his congratulations. Finally, it's Nadia's turn to step forward and present her laurel wreath. The Maris watches her closely, assuming that the wreath is intended for Joe since the Duke so clearly favors him. He's totally shocked when he opens his eyes to find her standing in front of him instead. He even thinks it's a mistake and leans down to tell her that she's picked the wrong person. Wait, that's kind of cute. Maybe this stony, silent man has some potential after all. Nadia tells him it's not a mistake and hands him the wreath with a smile, claiming she's had a crush on the Maris ever since she first saw him. Oh dear, I'm not sure he's going to buy it. Again, Winterfell leans down to warn her of the gravity of her actions. I guess he thinks she's been conned or doesn't know what she's doing, but Nadia keeps up her innocent act and offers him the laurel while the crowd cheers around them. That is until the Maris refuses. Yikes. Can't he just accept it and say no later? This is so embarrassing for her. If I were Nadia, I would have kicked him and slammed the crown on his head already. With the pressure of the watching citizens, Winterfell has no choice but to accept and walks off stage, all moody. It's not exactly the way she was hoping things would go, but still, a win is a win. Her father, the Duke, is delighted, mainly because he got to see the Maris's humiliated face. As the Batchet family heads to their carriage, they're caught by an angry Joe, who is not expecting the ceremony to go the way it did. I guess someone forgot to give him the memo. The Duke Badgett apologizes for the mix-up and promises to find him a better marriage partner. They start yelling at each other, but eventually, the Duke is able to get him back on side, promising to make it up to him in the future. Well, that sounds ominous as heck. The girls follow their father into the carriage. As Nadia is climbing in, she catches sight of Joe's expression, wondering what he's thinking. She forces herself to look away. Whatever's going on in his head is none of her business. She may have messed up his plans, but he's the one who betrayed her first. Back in Winterfell, the Duke is still recovering from the drama of the ceremony. It doesn't help that he's the talk of the town either. People were really swayed by Nadia's innocence. Already, there's a rumor that it was an act of true love. The Maris is advised to act quickly, but he knows it's already too late. He hands his but a letter from the royal family, basically ordering him to get married now. That doesn't leave poor Winterfell with many options unless he wants to disobey the king and potentially start a civil war. But still, it feels unfair. The northern nobles worked so hard during the latest conflict, and this is how they reward their greatest soldier? The Maris isn't stupid. He knows Duke Badgett is wrapped up in this somehow. The reason all this tension lies between the Northerners and the rest of the kingdom is because the territory surrounding the founding Winterfell estate originally ruled itself. It was only defeated by the royal family 100 years ago, meaning they can still remember independence. They also have very different cultures and duties. For example, the northern armies defend the kingdom against monsters and are therefore considered barbaric by many. As if that wasn't enough to make them enemies, the previous Maris Winterfell and his wife got into a mysterious accident because of some kind of conspiracy. I'm sure we'll find out more about that later. Maybe because of all of that suspicion and hatred, the Maris quickly catches on to the Duke's true intentions. He doesn't want to invite a spy into the heart of his territory. But for now, there's no choice but to do as the king says. Besides, she won't have a single ally up north. There's not much she can do if she can't even make friends. So, to everyone's surprise, the marriage between the Winterfell and Badgett families actually went ahead after a brief engagement and a simple wedding celebration. The details were ironed out, and a celebration party was hosted at the Badgett estate. Winterfell spent the whole time glaring at the southern nobles, who wouldn't stop gossiping about him. Even when his new wife asks him to dance, he looks like he'd rather slay monsters than step onto the dance floor. Nadia tries to keep up her sweet and harmless act while they take the floor, taking every opportunity to get closer, but he shuts her down at every turn. He even says it's too early for them to be on a first-name basis. Sir, you're literally married. If that's too early, then when the heck is the right time? Their 50th anniversary? Nadia endorses the humiliation of her new husband, acting so hostile toward her in public. She steps onto the balcony for some fresh air, where she's found by Joe. He seems to have taken the whole marriage thing a little personally. It's like he decided that this is all about him and that Nadia must have arranged the alliance with Winterfell because she couldn't stand the idea of marrying him.
Get a grip.
Nadia is taken aback by his abruptness. What she really wants to do is call him out for betraying her first. I mean, why does he even care when he's going to ditch her anyway? Instead of speaking her mind, she coldly tells him that they wouldn't have worked and heads further into the garden for some more peace and quiet. Unfortunately, those two things simply aren't attainable when Karen is around. She clearly came just to kick her when she's down, talking about how Nadia is nothing more than their father's chess piece. But, as her sister points out, Karen is not much better. Now that the marriage to Joe fell through, the trueborn sister might be on the chopping block. Karen simply refuses to believe that their father sees them as pawns and nothing more. She wants to believe that she's better than Nadia because of her legitimate blood and her beauty and blah blah blah. Her ego is so fragile. Unfortunately, she catches Nadia looking at a necklace, the one left for her by Nadia's birth mother. So, of course, she snatches up the opportunity and tells her sister to beg on her knees if she wants it back. Of course, Nadia would rather eat dirt than ever beg her evil sister. She acts all subservient, and once she's close enough, she shoves Karen into the pond and snatches the necklace for herself. That's more like it. Actually, this scene happened once before in Nadia's previous life. Back then, she did everything her sister asked and still didn't get the necklace back. Now, she knows better. Guests soon rush over to help Karen out of the water. As soon as Duke Badgett appears, Karen starts playing the victim and yelling all kinds of nasty words at her half-sister. At this point, Nadia is a pro at playing dumb and somehow manages to get Karen to confess the truth, that she was using her mother's necklace to threaten her. I mean, how dumb can you get? Now Nadia gets to walk away with the necklace and her pride intact while the guests gossip about the nasty youngest daughter of the Dewey. I'd call that a win. After the party, the Maris travels back toward Winterfell territory with his new bride in tow. His right-hand man, Fabian, is clearly dying to ask him questions about his wife, but Winterfell is, well, let's just say he's not in the mood. Obviously, they're still suspicious of Duke Badgett, but Nadia has played her part so well that Fabian is starting to wonder if this really is a love marriage. The Maris, on the other hand, isn't so easily fooled. He warns his second not to be so easily swayed. Anyone from the Badgett family is capable of betrayal in the blink of an eye. Plus, it's pretty clear this marriage is not going to bring any kind of genuine alliance between the two families, considering how much they hate each other. Having firmly squashed Fabian's hopes, he orders him to drop back and patrol alongside the ladies' carriage. Nadia pops out to talk with him, all friendly and smiling as usual. It must be super awkward to go between husband and wife with all this tension. I get the feeling this guy's going to struggle. He introduces himself formally as Fabian Knox. He's going to be her temporary escort until they arrive at the Dewey. He's trying so hard to be stiff with her, probably because he doesn't want the Maris thinking he's been fooled by this Badgett girl. But Nadia doesn't mind. She assures Fabian that her feelings for his master are real. One look at her sweet little smile, and the young knight is totally swayed. He immediately bumbles an apology and offers to tell her a story to pass the journey time. Nice, she gained her very first ally. A few hours later, her new bestie Fabian knocks on her window to announce their arrival. Finally, she gets to see the great Winterfell estate in person. But there's no time to get romantic. Before Nadia has even had a look around, she's thrown into a wedding dress. Yikes, these people really don't hang around. Apparently, the dress was brought to the estate by the previous Maris Winterfell's mother. With the poor harvest and all the monsters roaming around, times are hard for the northern people, so it was decided that the wedding would be simple, not extravagant. The maids are probably expecting her to throw a fit, but Nadia takes it on the chin, just like everything else. Plus, she is actually about to become a Maris. It's about time she started thinking about her people. Unexpectedly, Winterfell's aunt, Grace Greenwood, was listening just around the corner. She seems impressed with Nadia's attitude, which is a very good thing since she's basically the highest-ranking member in the household now that Winterfell's mother has passed away and his father is bedridden. Getting on her good side is going to be very important. She compliments Nadia, saying that the dress suits her, but her tone becomes somewhat sinister when they talk about her nephew's dislike of the Badgett family. She says she wants to help Nadia become closer to Glenn, but it seems more like she's trying to put the new girl in her place. As Grace heads out the door, she leaves Nadia with an ominous warning about the importance of the wedding night in a marriage. Yikes, this woman really is not a girl's girl. Why is she trying to get in her head about their first night together? For the next few days, until the wedding ceremony, Nadia can't shake her fears. Up until now, Glenn had been so suspicious of her that she didn't even consider the possibility of spending a night with him. But he is a man, after all. Maybe he's expecting that. While the priest is reading their vows, Nadia is starting to spiral. She's so freaked out that she almost forgets to say, "I do." Finally, the moment arrives for the Maris to seal their marriage with a kiss. She was so stressed about what comes after that she didn't even think about the first kiss. Nadia is completely speechless as he bends down, gently kisses her, and then pulls away as if nothing ever happened. This guy is so cold, it's kind of creepy. When night falls, the new Lady Winterfell paces around her room, wondering if her husband will actually show. To her surprise, he does, but not to sleep with her. He makes it very clear that he has no intention of getting intimate or ever having a child with her. Ouch! Way to crush her dreams from the get-go. Actually, Nadia is kind of relieved. She makes a scene and pretends to cry so that the maids outside her room will think she's heartbroken, but truthfully, she only suggested this marriage in the first place to keep her free from Joe and gain independence from her family. So, if this guy wants nothing to do with her, that's even better. Finally able to relax, she digs into some delicious food before falling into bed with a full stomach. Quite the contrast from her previous life. By the next morning, Nadia's plan has already paid off. The maids are doing what maids always do and gossiping about the newly married couple, but instead of laughing at her, they actually feel kind of bad. Apparently, she cried for hours and even asked for some alcohol to help her sleep. Seriously, someone give this girl an Oscar already. Of course, all the staff are still on Winterfell's side, so they think the Maris did the right thing by not initiating anything romantic. Glenn and his knights overhear the maids talking, but don't seem the least bit concerned about Nadia's lonely night. He gives Fabian the job of escorting his wife around the estate, which is basically just to keep an eye on her and make sure she doesn't do anything suspicious or try to send letters back to her family. Despite the fact that she's being treated like an outsider, Nadia doesn't even mind having Fabian tag along. She manages to make it seem like Glenn gave the order to have his best man protect her. This poor guy. I told you he's always going to get caught in the crossfire. Of course, Nadia knows exactly what he's here for, and she's only too happy to have a chance to prove her innocence. She asks an elderly butler to bring the estate ledger so that she can start doing her job as Martian and look after the house. To her horror, it turns out that the great Winterfell Douay are in significant debt. Looks like this might not be the peaceful post-marital life she was hoping for after all. Apparently, the Northern Territories are all in a similar position. There are frequent waves of monster attacks, and the land is too barren to profit from agriculture. The royal family does send them money as payment for subduing the monsters, but with all the other wars and fights that people like Duke Badget have pressured them to join, there's not much left. Well, now we know why they hate her family so much. Nadia is stumped. In her previous life, the Maris was able to settle a lot of his debts, but looking at the current state of his finances, she's got no idea. The butler can see her distress, so he suggests that she use her dowry to pay off her new family's debts. So that's why they agreed to the marriage. They just want her money. That's kind of sad, actually. Nadia isn't stupid. She's not going to throw her only leverage straight down the drain for a load of people who think she's a spy. Besides, there's got to be another way to ease their financial burdens. The issues all stem from the state of the territory, since that's the root of the problem. They should start there first. Fabian listens carefully as Nadia and the butler discuss their issues and reports back dutifully to the Maris. He believes wholeheartedly that she intends to help them, but the other knights think he's been caught. Are they really all so suspicious of that smiley little girl? I mean, we know the truth, but if I were them, I would have totally fallen for her act by now. Later that day, Nadia is walking the halls when she overhears a commotion downstairs. Some merchants have arrived, demanding to claim what they are owed, with Gordon the butler. When they see Nadia, their tune changes instantly. Suddenly, they're very polite and keen to introduce themselves. Clearly, they've heard about her dowry and are hoping she can repay all the debts owed by the Winterfell house. If they can't repay in 3 months' time, the merchants are even threatening to reclaim the only fertile land they have. Looks like the situation is worse than we thought. Nadia asks to postpone the payment by 2 months and promises to return what is owed. The merchants are hesitant to negotiate with a little girl from the south, but she's already proving herself to be a capable Martian. She points out that the northern merchants and the Winterfell family have a symbiotic relationship, so if one benefits, so does the other. Keeping that relationship in mind, she asks for time to get the duchy back to a profitable state, promising to return the favor down the road with the deal she's offering. None of the merchants would lose anything. In fact, if she can't succeed in restoring the duchy's wealth, they would actually profit from this exchange. So, of course, they're pretty satisfied with the deal, although they still need to discuss it with the other guild members. It's pretty obvious that they're going to accept. Once the merchants have finally cleared out, Gordon the butler asks why she would risk such an important plot of land for her scheme. Nadia is keeping her cards close to her chest and doesn't reveal her plans, but she does ask the butler to invite the merchants who accepted the postponement to return to the estate to do business later on. You see, she only wants to trade with those who are patient enough to believe in and remain loyal to the Winterfell Dewey in their toughest times. That way, she can build the strongest partnerships with the most trustworthy merchants. For a girl who got tricked by her family in her past life, you have to give it to her. She's pretty damn smart. At a later date, she meets with those merchants who accepted and proposes to start an herbal tea business using the greenbrier herb. At first, the merchants seem concerned. Greenbrier is more like a weed than an herb, and it's only used by commoners. Fortunately, that means the costs are low, but we know Nadia, she's an all-or-nothing kind of girl. So, of course, she's going to use her incredibly precious dowry to buy up the entire market of greenbrier herbs. At this point, the merchants think she's crazy, and honestly, I can't blame them. But she offers to pay above the average brokerage fees, and with her influence and power, they don't have much choice but to accept. 2 months later, the news of Nadia's business reaches the ears of Madame Grace. Like everyone else, she thinks it's a ridiculous idea and asks Glenn to step in and put a stop to it. Of course, since she's acting with the dowry money, he has no right to stop her. But as his aunt reminds him, the repayment date is fast approaching, and from the outside, it does look like his wife has turned all her attention and funds to a pipe dream tea business, while the family is about to go bust. Business reaches the ears of Madame Grace. Like everyone else, she thinks it's a ridiculous idea and asks Glenn to step in and put a stop to it. Of course, since she's acting with the dowry money, he has no right to stop her. But as his aunt reminds him, The repayment date is fast approaching, and from the outside, it does look like his wife has turned all her attention and funds to a pipe dream tea business, while the family is about to go bust. Luckily for them, Gordon the butler comes running in to announce that that's not the case. Nadia did it. She actually earned enough money to repay their debt in time. And if at this point you're wondering, how did young Nadia manage to turn a simple commoner tea into a booming industry? Well, here's how. All across the south and north of the kingdom, the Black Death has been gripping the nation, spreading from family to family and bringing tragedy wherever it goes.